Welcome to this video lecture on the obstacles to graceful presence. You know, it seems everywhere we look, we see selfishness, suspicion, anger, fear, ignorance, and cruelty. And this is because, I think, people are insecure, anxious, and worried, and don't know how to live well with themselves in their own skin, in their own bodies. So they lash out at others. They make themselves miserable. And then, acting out of that misery, they mistreat others. They're not gracefully present to life and are blind to those guiding ideals of truth, goodness, and beauty that should inform the life of a philosopher. And not that people are evil. They just lack the wisdom to be gracefully present. So they're constantly at war with themselves, and we shouldn't expect them to live in peace with others. But it doesn't have to be that way. In this video discussion, we'll be discussing what makes people insecure and so prone to live a life with guarded self-consciousness. And I don't know about you, but I want to learn how to joyfully engage life. I want to learn how to participate in each moment with graceful presence, calm self-confidence, emotional resilience, cheerfulness, and with a loving and infectious enthusiasm for life. I mean, even in difficult moments, to live with that graceful presence. And after all, one might argue the purpose of human life is to, realize the full potential of the person you are. It's to become gracefully present to the fullness of being human, so that each day you can experience meaningful pleasure, the confidence that you're safe, secure, respected, and free. And maybe even more importantly, that each day you move closer to the ideal of your best possible self. I mean, at least that's the goal that I set for myself. And yet, I often experience, maybe like you, feelings and moods of, self-doubt, a sense of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, fear, and anxiety, which makes me guardedly self-conscious, right? And I want to understand why that is, right? Why it is that we so often feel guardedly self-conscious, and then, what we can do about it. And that's what this course is all about. It's about the art of being human, that skillful practice of living with joy in each moment, right? This course in how to be human, or the skillful practice of being human, is learning really how to live well with yourself in your own skin. As I've said again, most of us don't know how. And we need to start paying attention to how our body reacts to things, and then how we react to our body. This kind of growing self-awareness will help us be, kinder and more considerate, because there is this tight connection between our body and our emotions. So living in the physical world, it's natural to experience feelings of anxiety and stress. And then this anxiety and stress gets channeled into our insecurities about our body, our intellect, and our status. And if it goes unchecked, it makes us, guardedly self-conscious. So we're present to ourselves and others and life, again, with feelings of self-doubt and, a sense of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and fear and anxiety. So we don't live the life that we want to. We're too timid and fearful. And we hold ourselves back from, just throwing ourselves into life with, joyful participation. And it's a matter of the presence that we bring to each moment. What presence do we bring to our lives? We'll examine this idea of choosing, a presence of guarded self-consciousness, or choosing graceful presence. And we'll see over this course, or the many various video lectures coming up, we'll see from the perspective of all the world's great religious and philosophical teachers, whether we go to Hinduism or Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Confucianism, Taoism, indigenous philosophies, Western philosophies like Stoicism and so on. we'll see a remarkable convergence of all of their teachings on how to choose graceful presence each day. It's simple, but not easy to do, if you will. And we're going to extract 7 practices of graceful presence. 7 things, concrete things we can do each day to live with, what characterizes graceful presence, namely calm self-confidence, emotional resilience, cheerfulness, and again, that loving and infectious enthusiasm for life. And I wanted to, before we got into the obstacles of graceful presence, just, present those practices to you. And over the course of the next few lectures, we'll be looking at each of these practices in turn. But practice number 1 is, don't react to your moods. In the terminology of Buddha that we'll look at next time, no second darts. Things happen to us throughout the day that make us feel anxious, stressed, worried, upset. It might be something in the news, or, someone says something to you or does something to you. And these negative feelings that provokes are normal and natural and okay. Just accept them for what they are without reacting to them. Just because you are feeling stress or fear or anger doesn't mean you have to be stressed out, fearful, and angry. Just smile with acceptance at whatever it is you're feeling. Then turn your attention to your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, right? Your breath can always be an anchor for you in stormy seas. I've found the best and most effective way to calm my feelings and to harmonize my body and mind is through intentional breathing. We'll talk more about that in the next lecture. The second practice is to take care of your body, right? Sleep, exercise, diet, posture, movement. I think, and we'll talk more about this, but I think the most neglected aspect of being human in philosophy, and perhaps the most important aspect of being human, is our bodies. We need to learn how to care for and carry our bodies, to care for them in terms of sleep and diet and exercise, and to carry them in terms of posture and movement. We forget that all of our feelings, thoughts, desires, and actions are rooted in our body. They arise from our body. So an unhealthy body, unhealthy, posture and movement will definitely affect the quality of your feelings, your thoughts, your desires, and your actions. So the second practice is important to care for your body. Number 3, to direct your thoughts with love, compassion, empathy by controlling your inner voice. The quality of our inner voice is essentially the quality of our attitude. When your inner voice or your thoughts, right, are excessively or consistently negative, you will live in a negative and dark reality. So learning to control and direct your thoughts by learning to control how you talk to yourself, what you say to yourself inside your head will be important for us. And we're going to be finding how Marcus Aurelius and the Buddha both talk about the importance of controlling that inner voice. Number 4, focus on what you can control instead of what you can't control. Whenever you begin to feel powerless and frustrated, it's because you are focused on things and events and people out of your control. We'll learn to get in the habit of asking, what can I do about it right now, and then doing it, no matter how small or insignificant or trivial it might seem, right? And you'll get a growing sense of personal power when you're able to focus on what you can do and you simply accept and let go of, right? A focus on things out of your control. The 5th practice is to aspire to the greatness of goodness. We'll define those as internal goods in an upcoming lecture. But the most important thing in our life are not the external goods of money, possessions, etc., but the internal goods of character and relationship and striving to become just a little bit better each day, a little more honest, kind, generous, forgiving. And that's what it means to aspire to the greatness of goodness. Number 6, right, to esteem and treat everyone as you want to be esteemed and treated yourself. Right, this is simply the golden rule found in every religious and ethical tradition. So it's just to act with loving kindness, to always act with loving kindness towards all others brings a deep and lasting internal peace. And the seventh practice we'll look at is just focus on having graceful presence for the next 15 minutes. Again, as I've said, cultivating graceful practice is simple to understand but challenging to do. And it might seem overwhelming to try and be gracefully present all day. So just say to yourself, for the next 15 minutes, you're going to be gracefully present. For the next 15 minutes, you're not going to react to your moods. For the next 15 minutes, you're going to care for how you care and carry your body. For the next 15 minutes, you're going to make sure your inner voice is informed by love, compassion, empathy. For the next 15 minutes, you'll focus on what you can control and not worry, concern yourself about things you cannot. For the next 15 minutes, you'll try to become just a little bit better, more kind and considerate, right? More honest and with greater integrity. And just for the next 15 minutes, you're going to esteem and treat everyone you come across as you want to be esteemed and treated yourself. So those are the 7 practices that we're going to want to learn and cultivate over the next few lectures. But now we want to come back to obstacles. It was when I first began to read the great French philosopher Michel de Montaigne, that I realized, right, I had a better insight into how we most often are present to life with guarded self-consciousness, right? Our presence haunted by self-doubt and a sense of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and a fearful anxiety. So, we're hesitant and timid to really engage life. Montaigne helped me realize that guarded self-consciousness does not make us happy, obviously. So we seek to overcome it by pursuing things we think will make us happy, like wealth and popularity. But that's really a cruel optimism, right? It just becomes another obstacle to genuine happiness. The way to overcome guarded self-consciousness does not lie outside of yourself, but within yourself by cultivating graceful presence. And again, Montaigne retired to his castle in France at age 35 to engage in self-examination, right? And more so than anyone else, perhaps in the history of humanity, Montaigne, right, engaged in this introspection. He thought if he could better understand himself, he would be able to understand and help others live better lives. I mean, one of his aphorisms, and I'm sorry I messed this up, but every man has within himself the entire human condition, right? So if he could understand himself better, what was causing him to be insecure and anxious, then it was probably the case that it was also the cause of the insecurity and anxiety of others. And he, in fact, discovered 3 things which he thought were the root source, the root cause of his and our insecurities. And namely, it was the insecurity we have about our bodies, our intellects, and our status. So let's take a look at each of these 3 in turn and what that perhaps mean and whether or not it seems to agree with how you see things. So let's first talk about the insecurity about our bodies. Most of us, when we look in the mirror, see something we don't like about ourselves. We're overly negative and critical about our appearance. We're not comfortable or confident with our bodies. We're too short or too tall, too skinny or too fat, too whatever. And then our bodily functions embarrass us. The smells and the sounds and the involuntary actions. And they all add to our sense of insecurity, right? And here are some funny aphorisms. I hope these don't get censored by YouTube. But he said, even on the highest throne in the world, we are still sitting on our arse. Kings and philosophers shit, and so do ladies, right? So just coming to recognize our bodily functions are not something to make us ashamed of, or all of us, regardless of our position or status. We have the same essential bodily functions, and yet they make us so insecure. And maybe you felt insecure about your body before, about your appearance, or perhaps about your bodily functions. If you're like me, you've had that embarrassing experience of having your stomach growl loudly in the middle of a meeting. So again, we all have this experience of how our bodies might make us feel insecure, make us feel uncomfortable. The next thing is we're insecure about our intellects. We don't think we're smart enough, talented enough. We sometimes think, if people really knew me as I am, if they knew me the way I know me, then they would see that I'm a fake, I'm an imposter, right? All of us feel inadequate when it comes to how our intellects. We don't think we're smart enough. We always see people who we think are better educated or better read than us. So we feel insecure about our intellects. This happens a lot in the classroom where students, right, fear to speak up because they don't think they're smart enough. They might say something stupid. Some of the aphorisms from Montaigne, he said we're all blockheads. He was specifically here referring to intellectuals, to academic types, to professors who put on the air of intellectual sophistication. But if you look very closely, you would see that they're just as stupid as the rest of us. And I'm not offended at all by that. I realize that is in fact true. He also said, to compose, it should be our character, is our duty, not to compose books, and to win not battles and provinces, but order and tranquility in our conduct. Our great and glorious masterpiece is to live appropriately. All ruling, hoarding, building are only appendages and props at most. The next thing is our insecurity about our status anxiety, right? We're always comparing ourselves to others in negative ways that make us resentful or feel inferior. We compare their best with our worst. This is true especially if you spend much time on social media. He said, I care not so much what I am to others as what I am to myself. If only, right, we could always practice that. But he knew from his own experience that he too often cared too much about what others thought of himself. He said, the greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. That's a great thought, right? That we overcome this insecurity about our status and stop making those negative comparisons that we often make with others. Anyway, I found all of these insecurities in myself. Maybe you find them in you as well, right? They're the source of our anxieties and insecurities, right? These three insecurities about our bodies, intellects, and our status anxiety feed into our guarded self-consciousness, making us, again, filled with self-doubt and dissatisfaction in the sense that we're inadequate, not good enough, and again, leading to our timidity and fearful approach to life, And what it comes down to, I think, and what I'll try arguing over and over again in the course of these lectures, is it comes down to our inability to live well with ourselves in our own skin, right? It comes down to our inability to live well with our thoughts, feelings, and desires. Well, Montaigne did have a few ideas to help us, a few strategies to help us overcome these insecurities. Let's take a look at some of them. So, overcoming our insecurities about our bodies. He suggested that we observe small children and animals. And we'll notice if we do that small children and animals seem to have no guarded self-consciousness, no shame or hang-ups about their bodies or bodily functions. If you ever watched a 1-year-old, you'll know that they have no problem exposing themselves and doing things that we adults would find inappropriate. But, they're accepting, they're curious and non-judgmental. It's very refreshing to see, and perhaps observing small children and animals might help us become more accepting of our own bodies. Montaigne's chateau was a working farm, so as he was engaged in this process of self-examination, he was also observing his farm animals and how they behaved with their own bodies. And he found that as a way for him to overcome his own bodily insecurities. There's a character exercise that can help us here. Each day try to spend time with a small child or even a cat or a dog and observe how they are able to simply enjoy and be present in the moment and in any activity in which they are involves. So try that out. If you're feeling insecure about your body, take a day or an hour or two to watch small children or animals, your dog, your cat. Well, maybe not cats. They're boring to watch, but a dog or something, and practice that character exercise. Well, let's go to our intellectual insecurities, right? Imposter syndrome, if you will. He suggests that to overcome these insecurities about our intellect, that we should read biographies and autobiographies of famous and influential people. You'll see they suffered from the very same, anxieties and insecurities as we do. And again, realizing that even great people like, Abraham Lincoln or Gandhi or, Martin Luther King Jr., that they all, even though they achieved great things, they also battled these same anxieties and insecurities that we battle. Again, teaching us, I think, to be more compassionate and accepting of ourselves. That we're not so different or weird or abnormal, but we're simply human. The character exercise, as you see, is during the time of this exercise, study the lives of virtuous people by reading their biographies and autobiographies. Write down the traits they possess that you'd like to emulate, and each day do so. Let's take a look at the last insecurity about our status anxiety, right? So to overcome our insecurities about our status, how we compare, he suggested traveling, right? Visiting other places gives you a new perspective on life, to see how different people do things and appreciate things differently than you do. Maybe you feel that your house isn't big enough, or, your car isn't as nice as your neighbor. And then you travel to a different country and you realize it's only Americans who are so irrationally obsessed with large and useless homes, or have such a, attraction or fetish to automobiles. Then you can laugh at how silly it is for a family of 4 to live in a house with 8 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. Of course, if you can't travel, talking with people from all different backgrounds across class, race, culture, religion, ethnicity can be helpful. Here's a character exercise. Each day, go out of your way to meet new people and engage with others whom you would normally not connect. During the time of this exercise, take someone out to lunch with whom you normally don't associate, right? So if you can't actually physically travel in your mind, travel by meeting people around you who come from different places, if you will. Anyway, so hopefully this discussion of Montaigne and his recognition of the 3 sources of our anxieties, right, and 3 strategies to help overcome them might be helpful. Here are some other favorite aphorisms I have of Montaigne. Hopefully, if you read the aphorisms I posted, you might have come across some that you liked as well. This first one, though, is so cool, great. He said, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." I bet you can relate to that. Just think about how much time you've wasted, right, worried about some future event that either never happened, or when it did happen, it wasn't bad at all. And then you kick yourself, right, for all of the time you spent anxiously worried about something that was no big deal. This next one I find a lot of my students like. He said, "When I dance, I dance. When I sleep, yes. And when I walk alone in a beautiful orchard, if my thoughts drift to far off matters for some part of the time, for some other part I lead them back again in the walk, the orchard, to the sweetness of this solitude, to myself." The next one, "Whoever will be cured of ignorance, let him confess it." Right? I think that's a great one. Too often, people without the humility to confess their ignorance are the most ignorant of all. So whenever I read Montaigne, I come to value humility in people, right? And I come to really recognize the arrogance of many people in leadership or power positions. I wish they would have read Montaigne. I like this next one as well. He said, "The most manifest sign of wisdom is continual cheerfulness." I've thought about that as well. The people that I admire most, whether in history or who I know personally, right, and where I admire them for wisdom, it is true that they tend to always be cheerful. And lastly, one that I like very much, the best things in life happen when you don't get what you want, right? I mean, I think that's a great thing to remember whenever your plans fall through or you fail to achieve something that you were pursuing. I've found that to be true in my own life, that when my plans don't fall into place, that if I'm open to new possibilities, I find even greater rewards. I once had a student who was training for the Olympics. Had spent most of her life in training for the Olympics. And then in one particular training experience, she fell and damaged her knee. Damaged it so much that her Olympic dreams and her athletic dreams were crushed, were over. What a difficult, painful thing, right? To have everything you've practiced for and lived for to be suddenly wiped out in one accident. And yet she practiced, I think. She practiced this kind of wisdom that Montaigne is talking about. She realized that she could no longer pursue the Olympics, and she would just have to deal with that and find something else that she could devote her life to, which she did. She decided to become a nurse. And in that nursing program, she met and fell in love with a young man who they later married and had a wonderful beginning life together. And she told me as we talked about this, that this wonderful career she now had and this wonderful man she was now married to would never have taken place, would never have happened if she had gotten what she wanted, namely that Olympic career. So just something to keep in mind. Well, and anyway, in this course, in the art of being human, we're going to learn and practice how to replace that guarded self-consciousness where you are too timid and fearful to really live your life. We'll learn how to replace that with a graceful presence of calm self-confidence, emotional resilience, cheerfulness, and a loving and infectious enthusiasm for life. Where not only will we joyfully participate in life, but our presence, our joyful presence of graceful presence will liberate others to do the same. And then to end, I have one other way that I want you to think about this. And in fact, this might be the one thing I hope you remember when the course is over. And that is that every day you get a choice. You get to choose. You get to choose each day and every moment to be in either a heaven or a hell. It's a matter of perspective. You can choose to either joyfully participate in life or to isolate yourself, close yourself off from others in anger, resentment, pride, fear, or self-pity. But you can also choose to participate. Let me give you an example or two from my own life to show you there's nothing mysterious about this idea that each day you can choose heaven over hell. And by the way, if you read the commencement address by David Foster Wallace, he talks about this as well. But one summer, not long ago, my family wanted to celebrate a birthday of my daughter by going to a karaoke bar to sing karaoke. Now, I did not want to do this. I have a horrible singing voice. I did not want to embarrass myself by singing karaoke. It seemed like an entirely huge waste of time. But in that moment where my family wanted to go and I didn't, I realized I had a choice, right? Because I was going to go in either case, but I could go and I could be present with this, begrudgingly attitude. I could be there not wanting to participate. I could be there and make a scowl and try to, just by my very negativity, ruin it for everyone else to show them why this was such a bad idea. Or I could choose to forget myself and just go with it, just have a joyful time without, any, self-consciousness, just to go and participate joyfully. And luckily, that's what I decided to do. In fact, I volunteered to sing the very first song. It was Old Town Road, and I must say I knocked it out of the park. I went on to sing several numbers which just brought them to their feet. I sang, Perfect by Ed Sheeran to my wife. They were all in tears. It was just a fantastic experience. I loved it. And it was all because I chose, right, to joyfully participate, even though I didn't want to do it, but to joyfully participate. And afterwards, it was such a lovely, wonderful experience. One more example. I planned a weekend trip with my wife. We were just going to go away for the weekend, and we were going to rent a car to do so. Now, I love my wife. In fact, she makes these presentations for me, so, I appreciate all that she does for me. But she does have a habit to be somewhat negative and critical about my choices of rental cars and hotel rooms. I don't know why. It just always happens every time I rent a car and I bring it home. She says there's something wrong with it. Whenever we show up to a hotel, she points out something that's wrong with it. Well, she did the same thing on this particular trip. I bring the car home and she began to tell me why it was a bad choice. Now, in that moment, I realized again, I could choose to be either in a heaven or a hell with my wife. I could choose to retaliate, to hit back, to get even by, saying mean things to her or getting angry and reactive about what she was saying. Or I could simply choose to be forgiving and empathic, right? And listen without trying to pay back. And that's luckily what I did. I chose in that moment to simply be compassionate, empathic, to listen to her complaints and to try to understand them. And I did. And it ended up being a wonderful weekend because in that crucial moment of choice, I chose to be in heaven and not hell. And I know that you can too. I mean, when it comes to overcoming these obstacles of graceful presence and and practicing graceful presence, I know you can do it. I believe in you. So start today. Let me just come back. This is the end. The quiz code, you can see, those of you that are taking this course for credit, is 0001. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.